My daughter signed the contract. My son handed over my legacy. They gave my face and voice to a machine. Branded insane, erased by deepfakes, I was turned into an AI puppet. But I fought back, with truth, rage, and one final performance to reclaim my identity, my dignity, and my voice. I never thought I'd wake up one morning and see myself everywhere, but not in the way I'd hoped. Not in those old movie reruns or interviews where I shared my heart. No. This was different. This was darker. My own face, my voice, stolen from me and sold to a machine that had no soul. If you're listening to this, you might think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But listen closely, because what happened to me could happen to anyone. It all started 2 months ago. I was enjoying my quiet retirement in my little bungalow in Santa Rosa when a strange message popped up on my phone. An ad, featuring me, but I hadn't filmed it. It was an endorsement for some new herbal supplement, promising miracle cures, and the voice sounded exactly like mine. The face was mine too. It smiled, it spoke, it promised. But I never agreed to this. Never. I showed it to my daughter, hoping she could explain. That's when the nightmare began. She looked guilty, nervous even. Eventually, she blurted out something that shattered me. "Dad, I signed something years ago, for your digital rights. I thought it was just paperwork for your estate, but it was with a company that makes AI videos. They've been using your image, your voice, selling it." I sat there, stunned. My own family had unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, given away the most precious thing I had, my identity. But this was just the beginning. Soon after, things got worse. I found videos on the internet, not just ads, deepfake videos, some humiliating, others downright vile. I was being used in ways that no actor, no person, should ever endure. I tried to confront the company, but they hid behind contracts and legal jargon. I went public with my story, but the press painted me as a washed-up actor grasping at fame. When I tried to sue, my own lawyer advised me to get a psychiatric evaluation. "You're imagining things," they said. "This AI stuff is new. You're confused." But I'm not confused. I'm furious. And I'm planning something they didn't expect, one last performance. A live, unfiltered reveal. No AI. No scripts. Just me, speaking my truth in front of the world. Because if they want to make money off my face and voice, then they're going to see the real me, raw, angry, and unstoppable. Before I dive deeper into this story, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear how I'm going to take back what's mine. This isn't just my fight, it's a warning for all of us. Now, I want to know, where are you listening from? What's your story? Because this battle isn't just about me. It's about all of us losing ourselves in a world run by machines. I spent the first few days after that revelation in a haze. My daughter's confession echoed in my mind, and I couldn't stop replaying every moment I'd spent with my family. How had I, not seen this coming? The papers she showed me were dense with legal jargon, the kind I never cared to understand before. Digital likeness rights, AI reproduction license, perpetual usage clause. Words designed to confuse, to trap me in a cage I didn't even know existed. The company's name was Synergex Digital. They called themselves pioneers in AI entertainment, claiming to revolutionize media by creating virtual actors from real people. But I was no actor to them, I was a product, a brand to exploit endlessly. When I called Synergex's legal department, I was met with cold professionalism. A voice on the other end told me everything was fully authorized and contractually binding. I asked who signed the contract, and they said it was my daughter. My blood ran cold. I tried calling my daughter back. Her tone was distant, apologetic, but there was something else, fear, maybe. When I pressed her, she broke down. "Dad, I didn't know what I was signing. It was years ago. They told me it was just paperwork for your archive. I swear, I didn't want this. But it didn't matter now. The damage was done. I decided to dig deeper. I requested copies of every video, every ad, every recording that Synergex had made using my digital self. What I found sickened me. There were ads for products I'd never endorse, weight loss pills with dangerous side effects, energy drinks packed with chemicals I refused to touch. Worse, there were videos that were outright humiliations, fake interviews where I mocked my own career, and horrifying deepfake scenes of a nature I refused to describe. It wasn't just my career on the line, it was my dignity, my very essence as a human being. I took my findings to a lawyer recommended by an old friend in the industry, someone who had handled cases involving digital rights before. He skimmed through the contracts and shook his head. "These contracts are airtight," he said flatly. "Your daughter signed away your likeness for good. And with AI, the company can create virtually anything without needing new footage." I felt the walls closing in. How could a lifetime of hard work be erased by a few signatures on a page I never saw? Determined, I filed a lawsuit anyway. I wanted to fight, not just for me, but for everyone who might be next. But that fight took a cruel twist. Synergex launched a campaign to discredit me. They leaked doctored videos showing me behaving erratically, videos so convincing even I doubted my own memories. Suddenly, my phone rang non-stop with calls from concerned people. Friends avoided me. The press called me delusional, paranoid, a man out of touch with reality. When the court ordered a psychiatric evaluation, I almost laughed. I'm not insane. I'm a victim. Still, the system is slow, and the technology is new. The judge dismissed my case, citing insufficient evidence and questionable mental health. But I refused to let them win. Now, I'm planning my next move. A live broadcast, uncensored, unedited. No AI can fake what's real when it's happening in front of your eyes. The day I decided to go public with my story was the day everything changed. I had no idea what I was walking into, but I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. I booked time on a local radio show, hoping to reach people who might listen without judgment. I told my story, the contracts, the videos, the betrayal. My voice trembled, but I forced myself to sound strong. I had to. After the broadcast, the reaction was overwhelming. Calls flooded my phone, from people thanking me for speaking out, from others who shared similar nightmares about AI, digital identities, and lost control. But just as quickly, the backlash began. Anonymous social media accounts popped up, attacking my character. Fake news websites spun stories about my declining mental health, painting me as unstable, desperate for attention. The company had money, influence, and connections. They weren't going down without a fight. One evening, I found a stranger standing outside my house. He didn't say a word, just watched me from across the street before disappearing into the night. My nerves were frayed, and I wondered if I was finally losing it. But the next day, strange things started happening on my devices. Emails I didn't send, messages I never wrote. Files mysteriously deleted. I was being hacked, maybe monitored. I tried to tell my daughter, but she avoided the subject now, her guilt buried under layers of fear. I understood, in a way. If you knew you'd handed over your father's identity to a company making millions off him, wouldn't you want to look away too? One night, I stayed up, watching the deepfake videos one more time. Each was like a stab in the heart, seeing my face twisted, my voice used to lie, to manipulate. It was like watching a stranger masquerade as me, robbing me of the years I'd lived and the truth I'd earned. But then, amid the despair, an idea formed. If they could use AI to create me, then maybe I could use technology to fight back. Maybe I could hack their system, expose their secrets. I wasn't a tech expert, but I knew a few people who could help. I reached out to Marcus, an old friend from my theater days who had since become a cybersecurity specialist. If anyone could help me unravel this mess, it was him. When we met in a quiet cafe, I showed him everything: the contracts, the videos, the emails. His face grew grim as he scanned through the data. "This isn't just about digital rights," he said quietly. "They've built a whole underground operation. Not just ads, but private data sales, illegal deepfake content, identity laundering. If we expose this, it could bring them down." Hope flickered inside me for the first time in months. But hope is dangerous when you're up against a corporation that will do anything to protect its profits. The night after our meeting, my phone buzzed with a threatening message: "Stop digging, or the face you know disappears forever." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. They weren't bluffing. This was no longer just about stolen identity. It was a war. And I was ready to fight. I never imagined that losing control of my own face and voice would feel like being trapped inside a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. But every day, I woke up more tangled in their web. The threatening message on my phone was the first real sign that Synergex wasn't just a faceless corporation; they were a shadowy beast with teeth and claws. I didn't sleep that night, staring at the ceiling, imagining what disappearing really meant. Next morning, Marcus called. His voice was sharp, urgent. "They've been monitoring you for weeks, maybe months. Your devices, your calls, even your movements. If you want to fight back, we have to be smarter." He introduced me to a small group of digital activists, hackers who specialized in exposing corporate abuse and AI misuse. They were fierce, passionate, and dangerous in the best way. They called themselves the Digital Resistance. They told me the real story behind Synergex, how they'd quietly built a global empire by signing contracts like mine with thousands of people, most unaware of the consequences. Some were dead already, yet their digital doubles kept working, selling, performing in ways the real people never consented to. One woman, a singer from Europe, had her voice used to create dozens of fake albums. Another, a retired politician, was deepfaked giving speeches he never made, some of them controversial or illegal. This wasn't just a company, it was a crime syndicate masked in code. But the resistance warned me: Synergex was ruthless. They'd crush anyone who threatened their empire. They'd already done it before. I felt like a pawn, but with the resistance's help, maybe I could be a kingmaker instead. The plan was simple but risky: hack into Synergex's central servers, expose their contracts, their fake videos, their illegal activities to the public. A data dump so massive, it couldn't be ignored. But first, I had to get past their security, which was state-of-the-art. For days, I watched my house like a fortress, wary of every shadow. Strangers passed by, cameras seemed to track my every move, and even my emails felt like walking through a minefield. One afternoon, Marcus dropped by with a device, something small, unassuming. "This will help us create a secure channel," he said. "If you want to take down a giant, you've got to use their own weapons." Still, doubt gnawed at me. What if this made things worse? What if I was dragged deeper into a war I couldn't win? Then I looked at my reflection, the face they'd stolen, used, abused. If I didn't fight now, who would? I gave the green light. The resistance went to work. That night, as the city slept, the battle behind the screen began. The night we launched our first attack on Synergex's fortress felt like stepping into a new, alien world. I wasn't an expert in technology, far from it. But that night, surrounded by the digital resistance and their blinking screens, I realized how deep this war had become. Marcus sat beside me, fingers flying over his keyboard, guiding me through each step. His voice was calm but charged with urgency. "We're not just hacking a website. This is a fortress with layers of security built to keep people like us out. Firewalls, encrypted servers, artificial intelligence defenses." I nodded, feeling a mix of awe and fear. This was bigger than I'd imagined. For hours, the room was silent except for the tapping keys and occasional sighs. Every progress bar was a heartbeat, every code line a lifeline. My nerves felt like they were stretched tight, but I couldn't stop watching the screen. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Marcus's eyes flicked up. "We're in." Those two words hit me harder than any blow. It wasn't a full victory, far from it, but it was the first crack in Synergex's armor. What followed was a relentless download of files, documents, and videos, enough to bury them. Contracts signed by unsuspecting people, many of whom had passed away years ago, yet their digital selves were still working, still being exploited. Fake endorsements, unauthorized ads, even deepfake videos that crossed every line imaginable. The horror of it made my stomach churn. These weren't just contracts, they were chains binding people's identities to a machine that had no conscience. As we sifted through the data, the gravity of their operation became clearer. Synergex wasn't just profiting from stolen likenesses, they were laundering identities, selling private data, and creating fabricated personas to manipulate markets and politics. It was a digital crime syndicate hidden behind a corporate veil. Then the air shifted. Elena, one of the Resistance's sharpest minds, messaged Marcus privately. Her tone was urgent, something was wrong. Minutes later, the chat room fell silent, the usual banter replaced by tense whispers. Elena vanished from the group without explanation. Marcus turned to me, his expression grim. "We have a mole. Someone inside Synergex is watching us. Feeding them information." Betrayal struck like a cold dagger. I had come to trust these people, my last hope. Now, the enemy wasn't just outside, it was within. Panic threatened to unravel us, but Marcus steadied his voice. "They're trying to shut us down. We need to act fast." The data we'd collected was massive. If we leaked it all at once, it could blow the lid off Synergex's entire operation. But releasing it recklessly would expose us and could endanger innocent people. I realized then that the fight was no longer just legal or technological. It was psychological. A chess game where every move had consequences. I made a decision. I would leak the data myself. Anonymously. Live. On a broadcast so public, so unfiltered, they wouldn't be able to silence me or rewrite the narrative. It was a dangerous gamble. If Synergex discovered who I was, they could come after me with everything they had: smear campaigns, fabricated videos, even legal threats. But staying silent was worse. Letting them keep stealing my identity, and others, felt like surrender. That night, alone in my study, I prepared for what might be my last stand. I checked the files one last time, making sure nothing could be traced back to me. I thought about the years I'd spent building my career, the memories I cherished, the dignity I fought to maintain. Now, those were all held hostage by cold machines and greedy executives. I looked into the mirror. The face staring back wasn't just the reflection of an old man. It was a symbol of a fight that mattered. I was no longer a puppet. I was the one holding the strings. The next step would be the hardest, revealing the truth to the world, knowing the storm that would follow. I never imagined the day would come when I'd use my own voice to expose the monsters hiding behind Synergex's polished facade. But here I was, preparing for the broadcast that could change everything, or end me. The night before, sleep was impossible. I sat in the dim light of my study, scrolling through the files one last time. Contracts from dozens of people, many deceased or incapacitated. Fake videos that twisted reality so cruelly I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. Not now. Marcus and a few Resistance members had set up the technical side. The stream would be live, unedited, unfiltered. No AI, no fake voices or faces. Just me, telling the truth straight to the world. There was no going back. At 9 p.m., the broadcast began. The screen flickered, and my face filled the frame. The voice that millions thought was gone, stolen and replicated by machines, was real and raw. "I'm not a product," I said, looking directly into the camera. "I'm a man. A father. An actor who spent his life creating stories, not being used as one. I told them everything: the contracts my family signed, the betrayal, the deepfake videos, the lies, and the threat to my sanity. I showed clips side by side, the real me, and the digital puppets created without my consent. Comments flooded in as the broadcast gained traction, thousands of people, shocked, angry, supportive. For the first time in months, I felt seen, heard. But then the floodgates opened. Synergex retaliated fast and vicious. They hacked the stream, trying to cut it off. False videos began circulating again, this time claiming I was unstable, dangerous, even violent. The news outlets that once ignored me now splashed headlines questioning my mental health. Friends who'd called me after the broadcast suddenly stopped returning my calls. And then came the legal threats, cease and desist letters, warnings of defamation suits, and veiled promises of consequences if I continued. Yet through the chaos, something unexpected happened. Other victims came forward. Stories from all over the world of people whose identities had been stolen, used, abused by AI companies like Synergex. It became more than my fight. It was a movement. But the cost was high. My safety was at risk. My family was distant. My reputation shredded. I was no longer just fighting for my face or voice. I was fighting to reclaim my humanity. The broadcast ended hours ago, but I still sat frozen in front of the screen, the weight of what I'd unleashed sinking in. I'd exposed Synergex to the world, but in doing so, I'd opened a door to a storm I wasn't sure I could survive. Within minutes of the live stream, my phone exploded. Notifications, messages, emails, some filled with support, others with venom. The voices of strangers echoed in my ears, some calling me a hero, others a liar or worse. News outlets picked up the story, but not in the way I'd hoped. Headlines questioned my mental state. Opinion pieces called me paranoid, a desperate has-been clinging to relevance. The company's PR machine went into overdrive, releasing carefully crafted denials and attacking my credibility. The video they leaked of me, behaving erratically, resurfaced, recut to look even more damning. I recognized the tactics: discredit the victim to protect the guilty. It was a dirty game, and I was the pawn. But it wasn't just the media. People I'd called friends for decades suddenly stopped answering their phones. My daughter, who had once confessed to signing away my digital rights, now avoided me completely. Her silence stung more than any headline. One night, the loneliness became unbearable. I found myself staring at the same mirror that had once reflected a proud actor, now haunted by betrayal and loss. I wondered how much of myself remained, how much was truly mine anymore. Yet even in the darkest moments, a stubborn spark kept burning. The knowledge that I wasn't alone gave me strength. Messages poured in from people around the world, victims of Synergex and similar companies. Stories of stolen identities, destroyed lives, and battles lost or won. Among those messages was one from a woman named Claire, a former pop star from France. Her voice trembled as she described how her digital likeness was used in fake videos promoting political propaganda she vehemently opposed. "They're trying to silence us all," she wrote. "But if we stand together, they can't." It was a lifeline. The digital resistance rallied, growing stronger as more joined the cause. Marcus and Elena worked day and night to safeguard our communications, outmaneuvering Synergex's attempts to hack and surveil us. But the company wasn't just fighting behind keyboards. One evening, a shadowy figure showed up on my doorstep, a warning, silent but unmistakable. A burned-out bulb, a scratched window, a note left on the porch: stop or disappear. Fear settled in my chest like ice. They wanted me scared. They wanted me quiet. But I refused to back down. In fact, I realized the fight was far bigger than me. It was a battle for every person's right to control their own identity in a world where technology could steal it in an instant. Legal battles began to mount. Lawyers on both sides flooded courts with motions and counterclaims. I faced injunctions, lawsuits for breach of contract, and even threats of jail time for defamation. I watched as Synergex's lawyers twisted my words, used their influence to stall investigations, and pressured platforms to silence our voices. But every time they tried to bury the truth, more voices rose. One night, after a particularly brutal online attack, I received a call from an old colleague, someone who had been a witness to the darker side of the industry for years but had never spoken out. "I'm in," she said, voice steady but urgent. It's time the world knew the full story. With new allies joining, the movement grew into a force Synergex couldn't ignore. But with every victory came new dangers. A fire broke out in my neighborhood one night, suspicious and unexplained. My home was spared, but the message was clear: I was being watched. Friends warned me to disappear, to hide, to give up. But I couldn't. I had a responsibility now, not just to myself but to everyone who had lost their voice. I started planning my next move, a massive public reveal that would leave no room for denial. A gathering where victims could speak, evidence could be shown, and the world would finally see the truth behind the AI masks. But even as I prepared, I knew the price would be high. I was already a marked man. And Synergex wasn't finished with me yet. The weeks following the broadcast were a blur of chaos, fear, and unexpected solidarity. Every day brought new threats, new betrayals, but also new allies and hope. The fire that had broken out near my home rattled me more than I let on. It wasn't just a warning, it was proof that Synergex was willing to destroy anything to protect their empire. I slept with one eye open, never sure if the next knock at the door was a friend or a foe. But hiding wasn't an option. If I disappeared now, the truth would die with me. And too many people were counting on me. Claire, the French singer whose story had touched me so deeply, flew across the ocean to join the fight. She brought with her files, testimonies, and a fierce determination that reignited my own resolve. Together with Marcus, Elena, and a growing team of activists, we planned an unprecedented event, a global live stream gathering victims, witnesses, experts, and supporters to finally unmask Synergex. The goal was simple but monumental: expose the company's crimes in full view of the world, leaving no room for denial or manipulation. But organizing something so massive meant exposing ourselves even more. Our digital footprints multiplied, and with each step, Synergex's grip tightened. One night, as I was going over details for the event, my phone buzzed with a message that froze me in place: "We know where you are. Stop now." No sender. No signature. Just a cold, silent threat. I showed the message to Marcus and Elena. They exchanged looks I didn't need to understand. The battle was escalating. Still, fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. I spent long nights rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd say it, preparing to face a global audience that might include enemies disguised as friends. The day of the event arrived with a surreal sense of dread and determination. Our broadcast went live on multiple platforms, drawing millions worldwide. Victims from different countries shared their stories, some tearful, some angry, all united by the same stolen identities and lost rights. Experts explained the technology behind AI deepfakes, revealing how companies like Synergex operated under the radar, exploiting legal loopholes and public ignorance. Legal advocates laid out the framework for new protections, demanding governments act to stop this digital exploitation. And I spoke last, my voice steady despite the whirlwind inside me. I told the world what it felt like to lose your face, your voice, your very essence to a machine, and to the greed behind it. But just as hope bloomed, the broadcast was hit by a massive cyber attack. The stream crashed, messages scrambled, and angry trolls flooded the chat with lies and slurs. It was a coordinated attempt to drown us out, to silence the truth again. But this time, the damage had already been done. After the broadcast, grassroots movements surged in cities across the globe. People marched for digital rights, calling out the dangers of AI misuse and demanding accountability. Synergex's stock plummeted as investors panicked over mounting scandals and legal probes. Their carefully constructed facade was cracking, piece by piece. Yet, for every victory, there was a darkening shadow. My personal life was unraveling. My daughter refused to speak to me, blaming me for the chaos. My few remaining friends warned me to disappear, fearing for my safety. One night, my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Who is this?" I asked. A calm, measured voice replied, "You've made a lot of noise. That's dangerous." I recognized it immediately. The voice of Synergex's top legal counsel, a man known for his ruthless tactics and icy demeanor. "Why are you calling me?" I demanded, anger flickering through my fear. "To offer a deal," he said smoothly. "Withdraw your accusations, stop this crusade, and we'll consider dropping the lawsuits and the investigations. You keep your life. We keep our secrets." I laughed bitterly. "You think I'm afraid of you?" "Fear isn't the point," he replied. "Control is." The line went dead. I sat back, heart pounding. The choice was clear, but no less terrifying. Give in and protect what little I had left, or keep fighting and risk losing everything. I thought of the faces I'd seen during the broadcast, the victims, the families, the strangers who believed in the cause. I thought of the stolen years, the fake videos, the loss of my very identity. And I knew, I couldn't stop. The war had moved beyond me. It was about justice, truth, and the future of every person in a world where technology could steal more than money, it could steal souls. After that call, I realized one thing clearly: Synergex wasn't just a corporation, it was a beast, and I was deep inside its den. Every move I made was watched, calculated, and anticipated. But retreat wasn't an option. Not now. I had to strike back where it hurt the most: their public image and their power to manipulate. With Marcus and the Resistance, we devised a plan to infiltrate one of Synergex's most guarded events, their annual shareholder meeting. The company had invited only the elite, investors, executives, and media influencers. But behind those glass walls, secrets were whispered, deals were made, and the real faces behind the AI masks gathered. Our mission was simple but dangerous: expose the truth live, inside their fortress, without getting caught. I wasn't a spy or a hacker. I was an actor, used to the stage, but this was a different kind of performance, one where the stakes were real, and the audience wanted me silenced. We created a fake identity for me, a wealthy investor interested in AI technology. The documents, the backstory, everything was forged to perfection. It was the only way in. The day arrived with my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. I dressed in my best suit, rehearsed my lines, and practiced my calmest smile. Walking through the lobby, I felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. Security was tight, but my forged credentials passed inspection. I was inside. The room glittered with power and money. Executives mingled with investors, sipping champagne and discussing quarterly profits. Screens displayed Synergex's latest projects, smiling digital avatars, AI-generated celebrities, and mind-boggling technology that blurred reality. I scanned the crowd, searching for faces I recognized from the deepfake videos or leaked documents. Then, as the CEO took the stage to deliver his speech, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Enjoying the show?" a voice whispered. It was Elena, who had infiltrated the meeting disguised as a PR agent. She handed me a small device, a portable transmitter connected to our live feed. "We only get one chance," she said. As the CEO praised Synergex's commitment to innovation and dismissed concerns about ethics, I took a deep breath and pressed the button on the transmitter. Suddenly, the giant screens around the room flickered, and then switched to the leaked footage we had hacked days before. Contracts, manipulated videos, and messages exposing Synergex's illegal activities filled the screens, broadcasting the company's darkest secrets to everyone present. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Phones whipped out to record the unfolding scandal. Security rushed toward us, but Elena and I had planned an escape route. We slipped out through a side door amid the chaos, hearts pounding, adrenaline surging. Outside, as we caught our breath, I realized something profound. This wasn't just a victory for me, it was a turning point for everyone. Synergex's empire had cracks, and we had found a way to widen them. But the war was far from over. Back at home, the fallout was immediate. Synergex launched a ruthless counterattack, flooding the media with fake stories and doctored footage trying to discredit the meeting's revelations. Lawsuits piled up against me and the resistance, accusing us of theft, trespassing, and defamation. I became a target for hackers, and strange people appeared near my home again, watching, waiting. But something had shifted in the public eye. People were listening, questioning, demanding answers. Victims around the world found strength in our actions, coming forward with their own stories. Governments began opening investigations. And through it all, I kept hearing one truth echoing louder every day: technology was no longer just a tool. It was a weapon, and control over it meant control over our very identities. The days after the shareholder meeting felt like living in a war zone. The exposure we had pulled off had shaken Synergex to its core, but their retaliation was swift and merciless. Synergex's legal team unleashed a barrage of lawsuits, accusations of trespassing, hacking, conspiracy, and worse. I was named as the mastermind behind an illegal operation designed to ruin their business. The courts, tangled in slow bureaucracy and overwhelmed by complex technology they barely understood, seemed to favor the corporate giant. At the same time, the media storm raged. Manufactured stories painted me as a reckless troublemaker, a has-been actor desperate for relevance. They spun narratives that cast doubt on every word I spoke. The public sympathy wavered, and I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. But amidst the chaos, the resistance grew stronger. Every day, new voices joined our cause. Victims who had suffered in silence found courage in our fight. Grassroots groups rallied, demanding stricter laws to protect digital identities from theft and abuse. I kept pushing, determined to turn this moment into a movement. But the fight came at a cost. My personal life was fractured beyond repair. My daughter's silence had become deafening. Old friends disappeared without explanation. Even strangers looked at me with suspicion, as if the man who once entertained millions was now a marked pariah. Then came the worst blow. One evening, after a late meeting with Marcus and Elena, I returned home to find my front door ajar. Heart pounding, I stepped inside. The place was ransacked, papers shredded, drawers emptied, my computer smashed. It was a message. A warning that no one was safe, not even inside their own homes. I reported the break-in to the police, but they seemed reluctant to act. Synergex's influence was vast, and many local officials seemed hesitant to get involved. The system that should protect us was compromised. The break-in triggered something in me. Fear, yes. But more than that, a fierce resolve. If the fortress was cracking, I had to become its hammer. I worked with the resistance to compile undeniable evidence of Synergex's crimes, contracts signed under false pretenses, financial records showing illegal profits from stolen identities, and data revealing the network of fake personas they'd created. We planned to release this information on a global scale, ensuring no court or media outlet could ignore it. But just as we prepared for this next phase, Marcus delivered devastating news. "There's a leak," he said gravely. "Someone inside our group is feeding information back to Synergex." Betrayal again. I felt the old wounds reopen, the trust I'd rebuilt shatter like glass. Elena insisted it was an inside job, someone who knew our plans and could sabotage us at any moment. We tightened security, changed communication channels, and isolated sensitive information. But the paranoia was suffocating. One night, I found a note slipped under my door: "Stop or everything you love will be destroyed." The threat was clear. Yet, in the face of this, I felt a strange clarity. Synergex could threaten, intimidate, and attack, but they couldn't kill the truth. I was no longer alone. The voices of thousands echoed in unison. We were a force growing stronger every day. And I was ready to take the final step, to bring Synergex down once and for all. Trust, something I once took for granted, had become the rarest currency in this war. After Marcus's warning about a mole within the resistance, a cold shadow fell over our tight-knit group. Paranoia seeped into every conversation, every plan. We weren't just fighting Synergex anymore. We were fighting the fear that someone close to us had turned against everything we stood for. Marcus insisted on running security checks on everyone. I watched friends I'd known for years become suspects overnight. Elena stayed sharp, but even her eyes betrayed the tension. No one was safe from suspicion. One night, after a particularly long meeting, I caught Marcus reviewing chat logs and encrypted messages. His face was grave. "I found something," he said. "Someone's been leaking our plans to Synergex for weeks." The betrayal cut deep, but the question was, who? We tightened our communications, moved meetings to new secure locations, and restricted sensitive info to only a handful. But every step felt like a gamble. Then, an unexpected message arrived on my phone, encrypted, but clear. "Meet me. Alone. Midnight. The old theater." My heart pounded. Could this be the betrayer trying to come clean? Or a trap? Against Marcus and Elena's advice, I decided to go. The old theater had once been my sanctuary, a place of dreams and applause. Now, it felt like the stage for something far darker. At midnight, the heavy wooden doors creaked as I stepped inside. Shadows stretched across the empty seats. A figure emerged from the darkness. It was Claire, the French singer who had become an unlikely ally. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice trembling. "I didn't want you to find out this way." She explained how she'd been coerced by Synergex months ago. They threatened her family back home, forcing her to feed them info on our plans. She'd tried to protect us while trapped in their grip. Tears filled her eyes. "I want out. I want to help you." The revelation shook me. Trust broken, but also a chance at redemption. We agreed to work together, using Claire's inside knowledge to turn the tables on Synergex. Back with Marcus and Elena, we devised a daring plan, to feed false info through Claire's channels, drawing Synergex into a trap. It was risky. If Synergex suspected the deception, they'd retaliate mercilessly. But we had no choice. The days that followed were a tense dance of misinformation and countermeasures. Synergex reacted to our fake leaks, shifting their tactics and revealing vulnerabilities. Then, one night, our trap snapped shut. We exposed a hidden server farm Synergex used to generate and distribute deepfake content illegally. The location was secured with stolen credentials provided by Claire. The digital resistance mobilized to leak this data to the press and authorities worldwide. Synergex's empire trembled. But with victory so close, the danger intensified. My phone buzzed with a chilling message: "You're running out of time." I knew this fight was far from over. The weeks after exposing the secret server farm felt like walking a razor's edge between hope and despair. Synergex's empire was cracking, but their reach was far from broken. Every victory came with a cost: threats, betrayals, and the ever-present shadow of danger closing in. Claire's courage had given us the key to strike back, but it also painted a target on her back. She disappeared from our safe house without warning one night, leaving only a note: "I'm not safe. Neither are you if I stay." The loss hit me hard. She had risked everything to help, and now she was gone. Marcus and Elena doubled down on security. Our team grew smaller as fear took its toll. Some left quietly, others were silenced. I felt the weight of responsibility crushing me, but giving up was never an option. One night, alone in my study, the silence was broken by a call from an unknown number. I answered cautiously. A distorted voice spoke, cold and mechanical. "You're closer than you think." But your fight ends soon. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat there, heart racing. This wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. But the fight had brought me clarity. I realized this battle wasn't just about reclaiming my identity, it was about fighting for everyone's future in a world where AI could steal truth itself. I poured myself into preparing the final broadcast, an unfiltered, undeniable revelation exposing Synergex's full operation. Elena worked tirelessly to secure our channels, while Marcus coordinated with international journalists and human rights groups. The night before the broadcast, I received a package, no sender, no note. Inside was a single USB drive. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into a secure device. Files flooded the screen, videos, contracts, emails, proof of Synergex's involvement in global surveillance, illegal data trades, and manipulating public opinion through AI-generated propaganda. The scale was horrifying. This was no longer just a corporate crime, it was a threat to democracy itself. The broadcast would expose everything. But with that knowledge came a new fear. Synergex had more power and influence than I'd imagined. The night before the reveal, as I rehearsed my speech, a loud crash shattered the quiet of my home. I raced to the living room to find masked intruders rifling through my belongings. I tried to fight, but they were too many. They left as quickly as they came, but the message was clear. They wanted me silenced, permanently. The next day, despite the terror and exhaustion, I stood before the camera. "This isn't just my fight," I said, voice steady. "It's ours. For our identities, our stories, and our futures." And with that, I pressed live. The moment I hit live on that final broadcast, everything changed. It was no longer just a story about stolen identities or corporate greed, it was a battle for truth itself. I stood alone in my study, the camera capturing every wrinkle, every tremor in my voice, every ounce of raw emotion I could summon. No scripts, no AI-generated masks, just me, vulnerable and real. "This is a wake-up call," I began, voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "They've stolen my face, my voice, my life, and they're doing it to thousands more. But tonight, I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm speaking for every person who's been silenced by technology and greed." Behind me, the screens flickered with undeniable evidence, contracts signed without consent, deepfake videos that destroyed reputations, and internal emails revealing how Synergex manipulated laws and governments to keep their secrets safe. The world was watching. Millions tuned in, sharing the stream, commenting, reacting. The tide was turning. But the moment of truth wasn't without cost. Within hours, Synergex launched a furious counterattack. Their hackers flooded the internet with disinformation campaigns, fake videos targeting me with lies and slander. They unleashed bots to drown out our message, casting doubt on every word I said. The media became a battleground. Some outlets championed our cause, others echoed the corporate narrative, calling me a disgruntled ex-actor, a conspiracy theorist, or worse. I felt the sting of isolation deepen. Old friends disappeared, some refusing to believe me, others too afraid to stand beside me publicly. Yet, in the face of this, the movement only grew stronger. Victims from around the world stepped forward, their voices joining mine in a chorus too loud to ignore. Governments began investigations, regulators opened inquiries, and the public demanded answers. But Synergex wasn't finished. One morning, I received a message on my secure line, a distorted voice, familiar but chilling. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning. Pull back now, or we'll erase everything you hold dear." I swallowed the lump in my throat, but I refused to back down. That same day, news broke that several key witnesses in the case had mysteriously disappeared. The stakes had never been higher. I was at a crossroads. I could run, hide, save what was left of my life and dignity. Or I could stand my ground, knowing the fight might cost me everything. I chose to stand. With Marcus and Elena by my side, we coordinated a series of global events, press conferences, online forums, public demonstrations, to keep the pressure on Synergex and rally public support. We uncovered more layers of their deception, offshore accounts funneling millions, forged contracts hiding in plain sight, and collusion with powerful politicians willing to turn a blind eye. Each revelation was a blow to Synergex's empire, but it also invited greater retaliation. I received threatening letters, strange packages left at my door, and late-night calls filled with silence. My family fractured further. My daughter stopped returning my messages entirely. But even as the personal toll mounted, the fight forged me into something new, a voice not just for myself, but for thousands silenced by the digital nightmare. One night, as I prepared for a major international hearing, Marcus pulled me aside. "There's something you need to see," he said, handing me a flash drive. On it was footage from a whistleblower inside Synergex, a senior engineer who'd grown disgusted with the company's practices. The video was damning. It showed internal meetings where executives joked about manipulating public opinion, disregarded privacy laws, and planned how to use AI to replace real people entirely. The engineer warned that Synergex was developing AI so advanced it could fabricate entire lives, voices, faces, histories, that no one could distinguish from reality. The implications were terrifying. We realized then that our fight wasn't just about stolen likenesses, it was about the future of human identity itself. The hearing was a critical moment. Before a panel of international regulators and lawmakers, I laid out everything: the evidence, the testimony, the lives destroyed by Synergex's unchecked ambition. The room was tense, filled with people who understood that the decisions they made could change the course of technology and privacy for decades. After my testimony, questions flooded in, tough, searching, urgent. It was clear the world was waking up. But the final battle was looming. I knew Synergex would fight harder than ever, desperate to protect their empire. And I knew the price of truth could be everything I had left. After the hearing, everything escalated faster than I could keep up with. The world knew. Governments, regulators, activists, they all had eyes on Synergex, and they couldn't look away. The weight of our revelations had shifted the landscape, but it also made the danger even more real. I was no longer just a retired actor fighting for his name and face. I was a symbol of a battle nobody wanted to lose, the fight for control over human identity in the age of AI. The pressure was relentless. I was followed constantly. Every call, every email, every move felt monitored. I was paranoid, yes, but it wasn't paranoia, the threats were real. One evening, I returned to my empty home to find it trashed again. This time, they'd taken my old photo albums, journals, memories I thought were safe. It was a message: we can reach you anywhere. But the biggest blow was personal. My daughter, the only family I had left, severed all contact. She accused me of ruining everything, of dragging our family's name through the mud. I understood her anger, but it cut deeper than any corporate attack. The loneliness was crushing. But I wasn't done. With Marcus and Elena, we pushed harder. The digital resistance coordinated with journalists worldwide. Stories poured out, people sharing how their likenesses had been stolen, how AI puppets were replacing real people in ads, politics, even pornography. Public outcry reached a boiling point. Protests erupted in cities worldwide demanding legal protections for digital identity rights. Synergex's stock plummeted, and their CEO was forced to testify in multiple countries. But Synergex fought dirty. They unleashed a smear campaign targeting me personally, digging up old scandals and twisting facts. They tried to portray me as unstable, desperate, and even dangerous. One night, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a video, deepfaked, showing me making violent threats I never uttered. I knew the technology was powerful, but seeing myself used against me was horrifying. The line between reality and fabrication blurred in ways that terrified me. Yet, despite everything, I found strength in the growing movement. People were no longer afraid to speak out. One morning, I woke to news that Synergex's CFO had been arrested for fraud related to illegal data sales. It was the first major crack in their armor. But even as their empire crumbled, I knew this was only the beginning. The technology that made Synergex powerful was still out there, in labs, in private hands, waiting to be used again. Our fight was far from over. And as I looked into the mirror, the face staring back was no longer just a victim. It was a fighter, battle-worn, scarred, but unbroken. The more Synergex's empire crumbled, the more desperate they became. Their attacks grew vicious, not just on me, but on anyone who dared to stand against them. After the CFO's arrest, Synergex lashed out with lawsuits, harassment campaigns, and intimidation tactics that tested the limits of the law. But it was the personal attacks that cut the deepest. My daughter's silence became unbearable. I understood her fear, how could she not? Her family's name dragged through headlines, our privacy shredded in the public eye. But it felt like I was losing her, piece by piece. One cold evening, Marcus called me with a warning. "There's chatter," he said. "Synergex's board is fractured. Some want to cut losses, but others plan a final, brutal strike. And they've got allies inside the government." That's when I realized the fight wasn't just against a corporation, it was against a system that protected them. Elena and I started digging into these political connections. What we found was chilling: lobbyists working behind closed doors, laws drafted to shield companies like Synergex, and key officials who had ties to the AI giant. The enemy was no longer just Synergex, it was the machinery of power itself. I struggled with the weight of it all. The fight had become bigger than I'd imagined, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered the faces of those who had lost their voices, the victims whose stories I had promised to tell. We needed to expose the corruption. Using contacts within investigative journalism, we leaked documents showing the cozy relationship between Synergex executives and government officials. The revelations sparked outrage, protests erupted, and calls for reform grew louder. But the backlash was fierce. The politicians involved denied everything, launching their own counterattacks against whistleblowers and activists. One night, I got a call from an unknown number. The voice was distorted but urgent. "Be careful who you trust. The enemy is closer than you think." Fear gnawed at me. Was there another mole? Another betrayal waiting to shatter us? I vowed to stay vigilant. The battle was no longer just about stolen faces or voices, it was a fight for the soul of our society. By now, the fight had taken everything from me: my peace, my family, my privacy. But it hadn't broken me. Not yet. The leaks we'd orchestrated had rattled the very core of Synergex and their political allies. Newspapers splashed headlines about corruption, shadowy deals, and the unchecked power of AI corporations. Protesters filled streets across continents, demanding change. It felt like a revolution. But power fights back. One evening, as I returned home from a small rally, I found my mailbox emptied. Among the missing was a letter from my lawyer, urgent and cryptic. I learned that new charges were being filed against me: defamation, trespassing, and even conspiracy to hack. The legal walls were closing in. Worse, my trusted circle started to fray. Elena grew distant, consumed by paranoia. Marcus warned me of compromised communications and urged extreme caution. The sense of isolation was suffocating. Then came the blow I hadn't anticipated. A trusted resistance member, someone I had worked with closely for months, was exposed as a Synergex informant. Their betrayal had led to several arrests of activists and key data leaks before we could secure them. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. I questioned everything: who else could be working for them? Was I playing into their hands? Yet surrender was not an option. I doubled down on my efforts, pushing for more transparency, more public awareness. I gave speeches, wrote articles, and appeared on international panels, fighting to keep the spotlight on Synergex's crimes. but the personal toll was immense. My daughter finally contacted me, short, cold messages accusing me of destroying our family's name. I wanted to reach out, to mend the broken pieces, but the wounds were deep. Late one night, I found myself staring at the deepfake video that had once haunted me, the one that had portrayed me threatening violence. I realized the fight wasn't just external, it was also internal, a battle for my own identity and sanity. But as the world changed around me, I found strength in something unexpected, the voices of countless victims who refused to be silenced. Our movement was no longer just about me. It was about all of us reclaiming our faces, our voices, and our stories. And no matter how hard they tried to bury the truth, it would rise. Months had passed since the world first glimpsed the truth behind Synergex, yet the shadows of their reach still lingered like a storm cloud refusing to break. The legal battles dragged on, exhausting me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Courtrooms became a second home, a place where truth and justice often bowed to power and money. Each hearing brought new accusations, fresh attempts to discredit me, and mounting pressure to withdraw. But I refused to bend. Outside the courtroom, the movement gained momentum. People from all walks of life, actors, politicians, students, ordinary citizens, joined forces to demand protections against AI identity theft. Campaigns flooded social media, and petitions garnered millions of signatures. Yet, behind the scenes, Synergex's tactics grew more insidious. One evening, Elena pulled me aside after a meeting, her face pale and voice hushed. "We've been compromised again," she said. "They're using AI-generated audio to impersonate you, calling journalists, spreading false information about our plans." The technology was evolving faster than we could fight it. The lines between real and fake blurred to dangerous extremes. I felt my own identity slipping through my fingers. At home, the silence from my daughter remained. My calls went unanswered, my messages ignored. Family was a casualty of this war, and it cut deeper than any legal blow. One day, a package arrived, a small, unmarked box. Inside was a single photo, me, with a smiling woman I didn't recognize, standing outside a hotel. I hadn't been there. It was another deepfake, designed to cast doubt on my character, to isolate me further. But it didn't work. Instead, it steeled my resolve. I realized that Synergex wasn't just stealing faces, they were trying to steal truth itself. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for all of us. The deeper we went, the more Synergex's grip tightened, but so did the resolve of those who refused to be silenced. Our fight was no longer just personal, it had become a movement fueled by outrage, hope, and the desperate need for justice. Elena and Marcus worked tirelessly, developing new digital defenses to combat the deepfakes and misinformation. Every breakthrough was met with a fresh wave of attacks, but we adapted, learning and evolving faster than our enemies expected. One evening, a breakthrough came in the form of an anonymous tip. The message pointed to an encrypted server hidden deep in a remote data center, one that held the master keys to Synergex's AI systems and all their illicit data. We mobilized immediately. The digital resistance coordinated with international law enforcement and cybersecurity experts. This was our chance to strike a decisive blow. The raid was swift but dangerous. Synergex's private security fought fiercely to protect the server, but we had the advantage of surprise and a growing network of allies determined to end the abuse. Inside the server room, we uncovered thousands of files, contracts, forged consents, financial records, and countless videos showing victims manipulated without mercy. The scale was staggering. Among the files, we found a chilling blueprint for a new AI project, a system designed not just to replicate identities but to create entirely new, synthetic personalities with no ties to reality. A future where truth and fiction would be indistinguishable. I realized then that Synergex's ambitions weren't just about profit. They aimed to reshape reality itself. The exposure of the server sent shockwaves across the globe. Governments launched investigations, and public outrage soared. Synergex's executives faced calls to resign, and their stock continued to plummet. But the victory felt bittersweet. The personal cost was enormous. My home was broken into once again, and threats escalated. I had become a symbol, but also a target. Despite the fear, I stood firmer than ever. I knew this battle would define the future for all of us. One night, as I prepared to speak at a global summit on digital rights, I received a simple message on my phone: "We see you. We hear you. And soon, you will be free." For the first time in a long while, hope flickered. The message on my phone: "We see you. We hear you. And soon, you will be free," was a small spark in the darkness that had consumed me for so long. For years, I had been trapped behind a digital mask, a puppet controlled by a faceless corporation. But now, for the first time, freedom felt possible. The Global Summit on Digital Rights was my chance to speak not just for myself but for millions. The room was packed with lawmakers, activists, journalists, and victims, people whose lives had been touched by this invisible war. Cameras streamed live to every corner of the world. I stood backstage, heart pounding, rehearsing the words I'd crafted over countless sleepless nights. This was more than a speech. It was a reckoning. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. The spotlight hit me, but I refused to be blinded. Instead, I stared out into the sea of faces, knowing that millions more watched from their homes. I began: "For too long, corporations like Synergex have stolen our faces, our voices, and our stories. They've replaced our truth with lies, our lives with synthetic shadows. But today, we say enough." The evidence was undeniable. I showed the contracts signed without consent, the deepfake videos that destroyed careers and families, and the leaked documents that exposed a network of corruption and abuse. The crowd was silent at first, absorbing the gravity of it all. Then, applause swelled, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire hall. But as I spoke, I felt the familiar pang of fear. I knew Synergex's reach was vast, and their retaliation could come at any moment. After my speech, I met with international leaders and human rights advocates. Together, we drafted new laws designed to protect digital identities and hold corporations accountable. It felt like a victory, but also a beginning. That night, as I returned to my hotel, my phone buzzed again. Another message: "This isn't over. Prepare for the finale." I understood then what they meant. Synergex wasn't finished with me, or with this fight. The next day, a live broadcast was scheduled. They wanted to confront me directly, to control the narrative once and for all. But I had a plan of my own. I walked onto the live stage unfiltered, no AI puppets, no scripts, just me, raw and real. The world watched as I revealed the full truth, answering their attacks with honesty and courage. And in that moment, I became more than a victim. I became a voice that no machine could silence. If this story keeps you hooked, please like, share, and subscribe. Your voice is the strongest weapon we have. And where are you listening from? Your support means everything. The day of the final broadcast arrived like a storm on the horizon, inevitable, fierce, and charged with everything I had left to give. Synergex had sent every message, every threat they could muster. Their lawyers had tried to silence me with lawsuits. Their AI puppets had flooded the internet with fake videos, smearing my name. Even my own family had turned away. But none of that mattered now. I was done being their puppet. The broadcast was live. No filters. No scripts. No machine speaking for me. Just my face, my voice, raw, unfiltered, real. As the camera's red light blinked on, I looked into the lens, into the eyes of millions watching, and I spoke. I'm not just here to tell a story. I'm here to reclaim what was stolen, my identity, my dignity, my truth. For every person whose face or voice has been hijacked, manipulated, and sold without consent, this is for you. I laid bare the full extent of Synergex's crimes, contracts signed in shadows, millions made off stolen likenesses, the deepfake videos that destroyed lives and reputations. I showed footage from whistleblowers, documents leaked by brave insiders, and testimonials from victims worldwide. Then, the twist. I revealed that we had traced Synergex's CEO to a private island, a fortress where he hid from justice, surrounded by wealth and silence. And we weren't done. With the help of international authorities, the island was under siege. As the broadcast continued, viewers saw live footage of the raid, helicopters circling, agents storming the compound, the CEO led away in handcuffs. It was more than a victory. It was justice. After the broadcast, messages poured in, from victims, supporters, strangers touched by the story. My phone buzzed with calls from old friends, tears and apologies, promises to rebuild what was broken. And then, a message from my daughter. Thank you for fighting. I'm proud of you. It wasn't perfect. The scars remained. But in that moment, I felt whole. The fight had changed me, but it had also changed the world. Machines could replicate faces and voices, but they could never replicate courage, truth, or the human spirit. I stood on the stage of my life, no longer a puppet, but a man free. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your voice is part of this victory. And where are you listening from? Thank you for standing with me.